Uwaga! Materiał, którego właśnie słuchasz, ma charakter wyłącznie rozrywkowy i informacyjny. Nie stanowi porady medycznej, ani nie zachęca do stosowania jakichkolwiek substancji. Wszystkie działania podejmujesz na własną odpowiedzialność, a autorzy podcastu nie ponoszą odpowiedzialności za skutki wykorzystania tych treści w praktyce. Jeśli temat jest dla Ciebie rażący, śmiało wyłącz, ale subskrypcję możesz zostawić. Hello everyone and welcome in another English One podcast. Today's guest is Jacoby once again for the part number 2 of our podcast. If you haven't seen the first, you need to see them because this is like a mind of a knowledge for all of you guys. Hello, Justin.
Hey, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm really good. I'm just finished the one with Justin Micali, so I am warmed up and ready for your knowledge to just absorb it and digest it as quick as possible and probably move it with it throughout my life and using it shamelessly, trying to pretend that this is my knowledge. So,
All good, man.
so
We all share.
yeah, for all those guys who are watching our first episode, we were talking about the contest, like an off-season period, and I've basically made an example of a guy who is coming to you as a new client. That we are talking basically about me because I am like quite a good example of someone who needs to just put a little bit more muscle, just get a little bit more heavy just because I wanted to jump over the weight class. So
Yep.
we've done that perfectly. Let's say you take me from 230 to 260 to 70, for example.
Yep.
And at this point, we're going to transit into the prep mode. So the first question is, do you like to do some sort of like a deloads or maybe like a pre-prep with your guys? Maybe take off the drugs like a health days or anything like specific to the prioring my body to the contest prep right before we hit it?
Yeah, absolutely. I like all of the above. Like everything you said there is stuff that I like to do, and if we map things out from a timeline perspective perfectly, then we should be able to do all of them. Now, obviously, circumstances change person to person, but assuming that I've worked with them for maybe a year or so prior, then time off of PEDs leading into the prep is very useful. I genuinely feel like a solid 8 weeks off of PEDs leading into the beginning of the prep, because exposure time in prep is pretty long. Like we're going to be on cycle the whole prep. That's a great way to kind of clean out and get the body kind of primed to be able to respond to the PEDs. Deloading from training. The week, go ahead.
First question is come right out me. What do you mean by off the cycle? Off
Just
the
coming down to a TRT base of testosterone with growth hormone in still. I may lower growth hormone to a maintenance dosage, which that's so person to person, but like maybe something as low as 4 IUs. You know what I mean? For a large male bodybuilder, anything less than that, they're not even going to notice or feel. Even 4 IUs is very minimal for them. But again, just time where their body can resensitize and be cleaning out, right? Like we need to give the body a break. And that's a perfect time, right? If we've done a great job in the off season, the 8 weeks leading prior to the prep, and the training should still be, rather intense up until we do our first deload, which I'm about to get into. Nutrition should still be in a good spot. Like we should still have, plenty of food in place. Cardio should be low. So transitioning now into the deload aspect, deloading for me, and I do this with my athletes the same way that I do it with myself. I'm not really good at going to the gym and training like 50%. So I just personally think just completely come out of the gym. Just play video games for a week, find another hobby, spend time with your wife or girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever it is, doesn't matter. Keep yourself preoccupied for a week. 1 week out of the gym is not going to kill anybody. I just did it myself. Actually, I was needing a deload after an off-season push for myself. And so I just did that. and getting back into the gym, I'm sore, but my pumps are great. Like everything feels good again. So, and I don't have a bunch of aches and pains. So this is a good way for us to keep our training in a great spot and not be overtrained leading into a contest prep. Because a lot of times, right, we want to push hard right into the prep. And it's like, well, guys, like we got to take a time out because the prep is going to be long and we're going to be pushing hard during the prep. There's not really time to deload when we're 10 weeks out from a show. Not really. You can pull training volume and intensity back to manage some fatigue, but it's not the same as a true deload. You had asked about cardio. The week prior to prep starting, I actually ask no cardio. So that whole week that they're deloading, they're doing very minimal. Maybe steps in the morning. Any activity they want to do with their family, if they like walk the dogs and stuff like that, regular life stuff, but no concentrated cardio, no training. It's like a full reset. That's the whole point, right? Like we're trying to drop inflammation and just like completely reset leading into the prep. Because we don't want to be doing a ton of cardio leading into a prep, because then where do you go from there? You just have to keep going up. What else was there that you were asking about?
That's it. Like,
Yeah.
you've answered it all. I just wanted to clear the air, because for some guys, it's coming off totally, like losing
Oh yeah.
HCG and stuff like that. And for some, like for example, you, coming off is like coming off the proper cycle. So coming off to the
Yeah. Coming
baseline.
off cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay.
honestly, man, like I very rarely will take athletes completely off cycle. And some people might say like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. It's like, well, there's a lot of ways to do this, guys. So for me, when it comes to working with my open male bodybuilders, my, super heavyweights, my heavyweight, like my big guys, right? The big boys, there's not a ton of time in our bodybuilding, time frame to really truly come off. And my argument to that logic would be, so if I brought somebody completely off cycle, HCG, HMG, Nolvadex, maybe some Clomid, and like did a full PCT cycle to try and get natural, production back. Well, how long of a process are we trying to do that? 8 weeks, 12 weeks? I'm like, because as soon as we go back on cycle, all of that work that you just did with that PCT, you're completely undoing then right away. So to me, it just doesn't, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And so the point of coming down to TRT is to just simply allow some of the androgen receptors to kind of clean out so we can get a proper response. We don't want to have such a high resilience to PEDs that we have to just be cranking the whole time during prep, right? We should be able to ramp them up as we go. But the cost benefit analysis with coming completely off cycle and doing a PCT to then just going back on cycle, to me, there's just not enough benefits for the cost that you're going to put yourself under with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that for those guys who are really understands the pharmacology of this stuff, they are probably realize that it's not even possible to get off clearly in a 6 to 8 weeks period. Just because
No,
if you are running 1,000 milligrams of testosterone for 20 weeks, you're basically probably run around 12 to 1,500 tests, like for to be honest, because it's gonna compound, because it's not like a linear, it's not elevates to the
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's gonna elevate above that level, because it's just stacking together. So probably after 6 to 8 weeks you're still 300 400 mix of tests or something like that. So it's not gonna do anything, you're just gonna feel like shit.
We're just gonna
And
feel bad.
yeah, and the body likes to be in a homeostasis. So if we're gonna bring someone down to the zero level for 12, 16 weeks, and then we're gonna bring it back, where's the point of it? It's
For a
just,
bodybuilding
it's not
perspective, there's not
rational.
really a point. And like if we're solely talking about bodybuilding, which is what we are doing, then there's not really a point. Now, I've taken people off cycle and run some fertility protocols before, and that's totally fine. and like, yeah, you kind of go through it. You feel maybe a little crummy for a little while and eventually it gets better. But think about it like this too. Like if let's say you've been blasting and cruising for 5 years and then you decide you want to come completely off. It's like, well, you haven't had like natural testosterone production in 5 years. So like that coming off process is going to be miserable. And so like, that's just my stance. I think that there's still a very healthy way that you can like blast and cruise. And again, but the cruise needs to be an actual, like a real cruise, like 200 mil, like bodybuilding, even if you're at 300 mgs of test, right? That's still super physiological levels of testosterone, right? That's still going to have you higher than what your natural levels would have you at. So if that's your number, fine. There's a lot of coaches that'll do that. No big deal. Again, we're speaking about bodybuilding, but truly, like, I think giving somebody a legit break of 6 weeks to 8 weeks at, 200 milligrams with just some GH in the mix, it definitely does some good things. Muscle doesn't just fall off of them. You keep training in a good spot, right? Because if you're still eating the food, you're still training, you're still getting proper sleep. You have a little bit of growth hormone in the mix, for health purposes and for, like maybe recovery purposes. The muscle doesn't just like evaporate overnight.
Definitely. Okay, so we cover up the transition into the prep. Let's go into a prep. For how much time you like to have with your guys, like at least let's says I am your client, so you not get me fat. I am still in a decent shape because you've just basically made me just a bigger version of myself with a decent parameters of body fats, and I'm still quite healthy. We've run through the health phase just before the contest prep starts. So how much time you like me to have for this
So
prep?
for this example, if this was our first prep together, I would still want 20 weeks. If you're a conditioning monster, meaning that like you're a hyper conditioned athlete, that's always a strength, you're never getting feedback that you need to be tighter, then maybe 16 weeks. If you're not a conditioned monster and it's the first time prepping you, and maybe you're not as tight as as you are in this example, then I would actually do a pre-prep phase at 24 weeks out, where I actually start slowly trickling things down, pulling out cheat meals, refeeds, and upping some cardio to try and pick up a little bit of momentum and create good habits those first 4 weeks. So that way, at the 20-week mark, we would be in a great place. Now, but let's say for this example, you're already in a good spot from body fat, and we're starting our prep at 16 weeks. That would be like, okay, flip the switch. We are now officially in prep, and our goal is to see, linear dropping in weight as much as we can, while, periodically bumping it back up with like refeeds and high days and stuff like that. But this would be the time frame at the 16-week mark where that first initial prep plan and prep protocol gets sent out. And it's like, okay, we're 100% switching things. We are in a deficit and we are focused on fat loss. That is our number one objective.
Okay, great. So how does the training change in the contest prep if it changes at all?
Doesn't change at all. I would like to start off the prep with a manageable amount of volume. As the prep goes, if as their cardiovascular endurance gets better, because let's call it what it is, as we start to lose body fat and lose some body weight, cardiovascular endurance and endurance in the gym tends to creep upwards from doing a little bit more cardio, being a little bit leaner, and just not being as quite as heavy, especially for you big guys, right? We're talking about big guys.
Yeah.
So they might be able to then actually increase volume up to a point during the prep. And then once we hit a threshold of where body fat levels are low enough to the point where fatigue is starting to set in, then we would transition volume back down a little bit. But the philosophy of my training, which again, we've talked about before, progressive overload, getting really strong, 1 to 2 working sets per exercise, and then move on. That's still the same principles in the contest prep. We want to stay really, really strong. We want to try and do all the same things that put the muscle on in the prep, because what put the muscle there is what's going to keep it there. Now, one thing I will add to that is, let's say you were doing more free weight movements in the off season, back squats, dumbbell pressing, maybe a barbell incline press, something like that, right? Things that are, very strenuous movements that do require a lot of stability and stabilization. When fatigue starts to set in and body fat levels drop to a certain point, in my opinion, it's safer for us to just move away from those compounds with a similar movement pattern. So maybe not a barbell back squat, maybe a Smith squat, maybe not a incline barbell press, maybe an incline Smith press. Instead of a dumbbells, maybe it's a incline chest press, any form of, machine that's stabilized, right? So we're removing some risk factors when we are getting leaner for obvious reasons, right? We don't want to take the same risk, right? We're always at a little bit higher risk of injury when we're sub, 10% body fat. So, and our goal is, 5% body fat. So, sub 10%, you're going to be sub 10% for a while. So that would be how I would. That's really the only manipulations to the training that I would really do. And then towards the end of the prep, when fatigue is high, recovery capabilities are low, that would be when volume is pulled way back. We're just in there to stimulate muscle from a muscle retention standpoint and get out. The goal of the training is not burning calories. That's what the diet is for. That's what the cardio is for. That's what the fat burners are for. Lifting weight, like Lee Haney used to be the one who said this all the time: stimulate, don't annihilate. Super simple. So, and I just feel like we've gotten away from that too much. And I think you can clearly see it on stage, the guys who are training like that and managing their fatigue from that standpoint. Now, I know that's a buzzword right now, like manage fatigue and RIR. I'm never telling my athletes not to take it to failure. Peak week is the only time that I'm like, hey, pull back on the intensity just a little bit. Because again, it's peak week, right? We're actually trying to lower stressors. So, but all the way through the prep, man, you should be fighting your logbook to stay as strong as you can for as long as you can. That's what's going to keep you big. That's what's going to keep you full. That's what's going to make you look really, really hard. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. The guys that are doing that are the ones who look that way on stage.
Definitely. Okay, so how you like to cut your calories? Do you like to do it slowly over the time, or in case of someone like me, do you like, for example, make a huge cut at the beginning just to make a deficit right away, and then maybe incorporate something like regular refeeds and stuff like that? Just because I'm asking you basically explained that, but I'm asking in regards to my situation, just because if we are never prepped together, maybe it's going to be a wiser, in your opinion, to try to bring it up a little bit faster and then maybe slow it down, or make it even faster if needed, because it seems rational.
So you made a great point there, and that's exactly how I would do it. So for this scenario where it's like, hey, you're a good conditioned athlete and you've always been gotten in great shape, but we've never prepped together, I'm making a reasonable, a reasonably sized first calorie cut, maybe anywhere from 500 to 600 calories from the diet. And then maybe I increase cardio output by, 150 calories to 300 calories. So now when you add those together, not including fat burners, but when you add just the diet, so input and then cardio output, we now have created a 700 to 800 calorie deficit right there off the bat. That's totally fine. And that's a relatively large first initial cut. And we should then be able to see you trending down. If the weight doesn't move because we've put PEDs in at the same time, so remember, we're starting prep. We're making our first calorie cut. We're making our first increase in cardio. Maybe some fat burners are in, but also PEDs are coming in at the same time. Sometimes that can cause the weight to just hold, but the look is getting better. Then I'm fine with that. And I'm always starting a prep with regular refeeds. So once per week, high days. And I kind of wanted to talk about this last time, and then you stopped me because you were like, hold on, save this for the next video. My refeed strategy in my car is I'm ultra saturating on the high days, like as much food as they can just about handle. And it's not dirty junk. It's like clean diet food.
Oh man,
So
that could be really dangerous at my I am a kind of guy who, if you tell me I am gonna eat 1,500 calories for 6 months, but if you tell me as much as you can, I'm easily gonna take 30
yeah, well,
hundreds.
it's like it's not like me just giving you free reign for the whole day. It's a structured plan. So it's a set amount, but like 750, 800 grams of carbs, I've pushed the 1,000 gram carb days, that's not abnormal. And then the way that I'll also, so like from a macronutrient standpoint, usually protein is reduced slightly, but not crazy. Maybe a 10 to 15% reduction in protein from what the
Yeah.
baseline diet would be, but nothing drastic. We still need protein. Um, the fats might come up a little bit at first, but it's mostly carbohydrates. Now, if I notice that, like for you, example, right? So let's say you do 1,000 gram carb day and you gain 3.5 pounds. Okay, great. That was a perfect response. That's around almost exactly what I'm looking for. But you clear that weight gain. So you drop that 3.5 and then hit a new low within like 3 days, maybe faster, maybe 2 days of baseline diet, and you're already at a new low. My next time, I might do it one more time just to be sure that it wasn't like a false reading. If you continuously are doing that and you're like clearing the weight gain from the high days, that would be a reason for me to add more fats because I want that fullness and that replenishment from the high day to actually stick a little bit longer. Now, if it's taking us 7, 8, 9, 10 days on the baseline diet to clear the weight gain from the high day and then hit a new low, then the high day was too aggressive. Or maybe it's too much fat, and then I would just simply pull back. So that's a way that I've used to kind of gauge what an athlete can handle and what they can't handle. However, probably the next logical question is, how do you determine what the high day is going to be? Okay, well, it's a percentage increase over what the maximum amount of food that they were eating in their off season was. So it's all relative. So if your training day diet had 120 grams of fat, 700 grams of carbs, and 400 grams of protein, first of all, that's a lot of fucking food. But if let's say that was just the macros, right? You're a big guy, right? You know what I mean? You're a 280-pound off-season bodybuilder. That's an amount of food that a guy your size can handle. So now I'm going to take the exact macros from that and plug that into your high day with a 20% increase of carbs. But I don't think that we would need that much fat or that much protein. So I'd probably bring the protein down maybe like, I don't know, 50 grams. So from 400 to like 350 or whatnot, just from a digestion standpoint. I don't think that we need to be pushing all of that much protein because, carbohydrates are protein sparing. So that's how I calculate my initial high day. And then from there, it's like, okay, there is no more calculating. It's based off of the response, and it's all about how you respond to it. And then we just simply make adjustments. Sometimes the high days go up as the prep goes on. Sometimes they go down. It just depends on the response that we're getting. So as the prep goes on, maybe somebody's more insulin sensitive, which they should be. So then those high days are causing them to drive up a lot more, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5 pounds. That's a little bit more than what I'm looking for from just like one refeed day. Usually like 3.5 to 5 pounds is a good response. Less than 3 pounds is a little less than what I'm usually looking for. Often have to do a second one back to back, which the athletes love, but I don't love that because quite frankly, the way I look at that is, well, that's a second day of feeding that we needed to do that could have been a day for fat loss.
Yeah.
Because if we can accomplish the refeed in one day, then we don't have to waste any time. And then I also don't have my athletes do cardio or use fat burners on high days because it's all for replenishment. So,
Great.
and for a metabolically gifted athlete like yourself, you're going to need as much help as you can get just for the argument's sake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, you're going to need as much help as you can to replenish and gain the fullness back and the performance in the gym. Because I want to see a solid 48-hour performance boost in the gym from a high day. Like the
Okay.
next two workouts should be like noticeably better than what the previous two were.
Okay. So in that regards, I have to ask you, do you like to run your guys' high days on the rest days or on
Love it.
the oh, okay.
Love it.
Because some coaches incorporated on, for example, lacking body parts, and some prior to the lacking body parts.
I'm not really worried about the lacking body part stuff in contest prep. Um, I'm focused on us maintaining like tissue overall. Of course, like yes, if there's a really glaring lacking body part, then yes, I might from a situational standpoint, like I might have that athlete do something different. I would say this to be true for my team is that most of my team has a pretty balanced physique. There's not a ton of like massive gaps.
Yeah.
But just for argument's sake, if somebody checks in, you check in with me and I review your plan and I'm like, okay, tomorrow is going to be a high day. And you're like, well, coach, tomorrow's a rest day. Should I wait until a training day? Nope. Go ahead, do it tomorrow on a rest day. No big deal. Totally fine. It's a day of less calorie output because of the fact that you're not training. So when we're looking from a replenishment standpoint, it's like, well, that's a great day to replenish. And also let's keep in mind what you eat today is really what's affecting you tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's not so much the day, like unless you trained at midnight at night and you have like all of your meals in and all of your water in for the day of the high day, then yeah, maybe you'll get a boost that day. A lot of that's like the placebo effect for like the high day and the same training day, like performance boost. It's a lot of placebo. If it falls on a training day, if I say, hey, high day tomorrow and they're training, okay, no worries. Like just that's cool. That's fine too. No worries. But I never will tell somebody, no, don't do a high day on a rest day. Like that's bad. Like, no,
Okay.
that's totally fine. It's a replenishment day.
Great. Great. Okay. So we assess the amount of calories we cut at the beginning. We assess the high days and the refit days. But
Mhm.
what about the macros? What do you like to cut first with your guys? Do you like to keep your guys on a stable protein amounts, or maybe at the end of the prep you're gonna decrease the protein to increase the carbs, or any other macronutrients? How do you like to what do you like to cut first, and then what do you like to do with your
So
macros?
protein will stay stable as long as possible. The only time that I will reduce protein is if I just simply need to pull calories from somewhere and I'm running out of other options. So like if fats are low, carbs are low, and I still have protein at a like an off season amount, then it's like okay, cool. I can pull an ounce of cooked protein from each meal and get a couple hundred calorie reduction just from that, and like that's what I'm trying to accomplish, so that's fine. Now I like off season dietary fats. Like I said, I gave you an example, like
Yeah.
your fats like in that hypothetical diet were like 120 125 grams. Well, I'm going to probably pull some dietary fats first when I'm after I've made my first initial calorie pull, and I'm going to pull some dietary fats a little bit and try and keep the carbohydrates as elevated as long as I can. And then, but eventually the carbohydrates are going to come down. On a rest day, when an athlete's taking an actual rest day, I do usually do a caloric reduction on those days. So it is not abnormal for me to tell an athlete to cut their carbs in half on their rest day from their baseline training day, but I will add a little bit of dietary fat into the rest day. So not only does that help with being able to drop calories, but the extra fats can help from a cognitive function standpoint. It also can fight off some of like the complacency of the diet because you're now giving your body something different. So it's kind of like cycling. It's not carb cycling, but it's a version of it. But it's just simply like diet cycling because now I have a higher fat day that's coming into place maybe once or twice a week on rest days only, and then the other days the fat is much lower but the carbohydrates are noticeably higher. So that would be, I guess, more or
I,
less how I would
I've
run.
I've called it fat replenish days.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. So
I like that.
what about the PEDs changes? Do you like to change it from the get-go, or do you like to keep, for example, if we are running Primo tests and a little bit of nandrolone during the
Yeah, perfect.
off season, then you like to stay on those tracks, like come back from the HRT, and then just come back on the same dose of PEDs, for example, during the starts of the contest prep, and then slowly switch it up, or you do something different.
I do something different. So I like so whether it's off season or contest prep, I like to ramp drugs up. And so because like once we hit a certain saturation point with like a set dosage, which if we're using long esters, usually 4 to 5 weeks, then I will make another little bump. So it's like here, 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 and I'm just kind of like making those incremental increases. But the hypothetical one that you listed, test, primo, and nandrolone, love it. Like big fan of that one. So whether it's off season or the beginning of a contest prep, I love it. It's very effective. They can be very useful. So the finishing dosages of an off season protocol, though, would not be the starting dosage of a contest prep protocol. The start of the contest prep protocol after the 8 weeks that we've been off was actually relatively on the low side. And it's almost like a beginner cycle. And I've had even pro bodybuilders tell me that they're like, this is it. And I'm like, yeah, this is it. I'm like, you got to just trust me. I'm like, this is it. I'm like, because you were off for a while, your body should be nice and sensitive. This little bit should hit you pretty hard. And then for the first 4 weeks, I'm just going to leave it there. And then after 4 weeks or so, I'll make a small incremental bump to the same compounds. Maybe I bump test by another 100 milligrams. Maybe I bump primo by another 100 to 200 milligrams. Maybe nandrolone bumps, maybe a double nandrolone. Maybe I started at 150 and then I bump it to 300. Like again, like small, right? Like we're going slow. But that's because I'm going to be titrating it up potentially every 4 to 5 weeks for a while. Now, if the prep is going super smooth, full, round, hard, everything's going well, they're retaining muscle, their performance in the gym is going up, so I know they're not at risk of losing any tissue, I don't necessarily have to keep increasing
Yeah.
drugs, like it's all super situational. But for like rule of thumb, I would say, yeah, I start on the low side and then I will slowly trickle them up incrementally. Usually every 4 to 6 weeks, I'll make a bump in overall milligram exposure.
Okay. So let's say you started the dose around 50% of the end contest prep
Yeah,
and
that
then
would be
slowly
totally
titrate
normal.
up. Okay, great.
Yeah, that's pretty
So,
normal. So, like for example, like I'll give some numbers and like I mean, disclaimer, like guys, like this is for educational purposes. But let's say the start of the prep, the test went from 200 milligrams when it was on the health phase to 500 because maybe 1,000 mgs was where we finished.
yeah,
Okay, that's totally fine. Maybe primo starts at 300 milligrams because we finished around 600 milligrams. Okay. And then maybe the start of NPP was 150, even though I usually will drive that up as high as 450. But let's start low just for the sake of starting low. A little, 150 mgs of NPP is definitely going to be felt within the first week because it's a short acting ester. So it's
yeah,
like, okay, well, let's get the most out of the least at the beginning because then again, we can always titrate up. One thing that I see this all the time, and it's like drives me crazy, is when you fry out an athlete with PEDS too early in a prep, there's like almost no coming back from that. Because like, yeah, you can lower your total androgen exposure, and if their physique is not totally cooked, then they might be able to respond again. But you're running a risk of like just driving them into the ground with overly exposing them to androgens, and then they're just totally fried. And then they stop responding. They're not getting harder. Their training is subpar. Maybe they're losing some fullness, and it's like, well, they went too hard out of the gate.
yeah, definitely. Okay, so how about the GH? Do you like to start it a little bit lower or not? And do you believe that in the contest prep, the more is more?
That growth hormone's tough because it depends on how the athlete responds to it. If they stay really dry on a double digit amount of GH, then hey, by all means, let's go. Because if it's not blurring their physique to the point where they're like super water retentive and we're getting the fullness from it and they're getting really good sleep from, like the, growth hormone inducing better REM sleep at night, and recovery's in a good spot, and we're getting some of the fat burning properties of it, hey, more is more. And
Yeah.
you run as much as you can afford with growth hormone for a lot of coaches, and I'm kind of on the same board. But there is a law of diminishing return where you start taking too much and then it starts becoming detrimental because there's so much inflammation. The joints actually start to hurt because they're inflamed and they're super water retentive. And it's like, well, there's a sweet spot. And then once you find that sweet spot with the athlete, I think you just sit there. And that's where that's like more conditional from, one athlete to the next. For some, it's 6 IUs, which is not a lot. For some, it's 16 IUs, which is a lot. So
Okay.
it's very situational. But I love growth hormone in prep. And it is one of the things that I will bring right back up at the start of the prep. But I will titrate it up in an effort to fight off some of the water retention from it. Because if you go from a low amount to a really high amount, like overnight, like you're 100% going to be a balloon animal for a couple weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So how about the fat burners? What is the best time to incorporate it? Right away or later in the prep, or it's totally person dependent?
It is person dependent, but like, and I've done it both ways. Um, I like cycling them. So if at 16 weeks out, I want to use a little bit of Clen, then I have no problems with Clen being introduced at 16 weeks. Uh, Sometimes as low as 20 micrograms, oftentimes starting at 40. And then I only will use it fasted on cardio days. So that's kind of how I'm cycling it. So I'm already making sure, and I'm usually a 5 days of cardio a week guy. I'm not a cardio every day coach. I think you need breaks from cardio and you need rest. So I will have them start off by only taking their fat burners, like clenbuterol, on like fasted on a cardio day, and then they won't use it on their days that they're not doing cardio.
Okay,
So
even
that
though
would
it's 36 hours
yeah,
half-life, something like that.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
because there's
just
still benefits to like from
sleep
a
perspective.
yeah, and there's definitely from a sleep perspective, and there's still benefits in my opinion from a tolerance standpoint. Because like if you're taking it every day for weeks on end, in my opinion, Clen very quickly becomes like really nullified. Like you're not getting the shakiness in the hands, you're not getting like the increased heart rate as much. Like your body builds a tolerance to it rather fast. At least the Clen that we have in the States, maybe it's not the greatest of quality, but
Yeah.
like that's what I've noticed over the last several years. So, and again, I'm only looking for that acute level of increase in output to be able to add in synergy to the cardio. And like I only take
Okay.
Clem fasted. I also don't do that. Like some people will break it up. Nope. It's
Yeah,
all.
the shakiness is actually from stimulus the nervous system from the muscle perspective. So this is why we get in the shakiness. But Glenn is actually, you're right, very quickly saturated the receptors from the muscles.
Mhm.
So this is why the cycling, for example, in a female perspective makes sense because the muscle retentive perspective of the Glenn in women's are higher than in the men's. But from the adipocyte tissue, like a fat tissues perspective, Glenn is actually not shown any suppression when it comes to the lipolytic effects and raising the metabolic rate in that state. So even though we are not shaking anymore, it
Mhm.
still provides the same benefits when it comes to the raising the metabolic rate, like basic metabolic rate. So this is something that I'm finding out lately because I'm delving a little bit more in the studies of the clenbuterol. So it might be an even a benefit to be honest, because we no longer shaking like a hell, but it's
Yeah.
still
Right. Yeah.
burning the
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
there was the times that people use the DAO like mats from for how do you say it in English? Um uh, like a mats for allergies to synthesize the receptors. You know the what I mean? Uh,
Are you talking about there was a compound that they would take to?
yeah. They use it. I don't know if that is the same compound that we use here in Poland, but for example, you can use like a sleep mats. Uh, it is that doesn't matter, but there are mats that could potentially then synthesize the muscle receptors
Yeah,
in a
you know,
woman's.
I've heard of I know what you're talking about, and like I remember like Matt Porter made some he wrote up some articles about that back in the day. Like he was like one of the first guys I remember like talking like reading about it that he was talking about. That guy was so ahead of his time. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah, it works, but it works in a woman's perspective, in a female's. On a
Okay.
man's, it doesn't matter, to be honest. But okay, so that's that we have the cover up. So clenbuterol is one. It is some?
Oh yeah,
Is
there's a
there
lot more.
is yeah? Is there something that you like to incorporate else?
Statystyki podpowiadają mi, że duża część osób oglądających ten kanał wciąż go nie subskrybuje. Dlatego jeżeli należysz do tego grona, zasubskrybuj już teraz oraz wpadaj na naszego Discorda. Link znajdziesz w opisie tego filmu. Zapraszam Cię również do wspierania ruchu Zapierdalać Trzeba poprzez zakupywanie merchu oraz szerowanie, udostępnianie i lajkowanie. Wielkie dzięki i wracamy do materiału.
I've really been interested in, and I've been seeing great results with the SLU PP332, the peptide.
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of it, and just from the good benefits of it. Now, it's still way early in the life cycle of that drug to know long term effects from it. So
yeah.
I guess we're all kind of like knocking on wood and hoping. But from what I understand with the drug and the people that I've talked to and the people who I've been educated by and that I do continued education with and who I've used really high amounts of this, because I know some people who are guinea pigging with themselves using upwards of 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams a day. And this is a drug that's dosed in micrograms and they're
Yeah,
taking
most often.
milligrams, so that I've seen phenomenal results with that compound paired with some others. 1,500 micrograms to 2,000 micrograms has been a really good level for my athletes. The only unfortunate thing is it's just so damn
Cost.
expensive,
Yeah.
so expensive. But I like yohimbine HCl as well. I like combining that with the clenbuterol because you have the beta 2 and alpha 2 aspect.
Yeah.
I am a T3 user, 100%, but I don't bring T3 in right away. When I feel like I'm seeing metabolic slowdown, but I usually will pair that with some lab work. So we'll do like
Definitely.
a mid prep, set of labs where we're, going to see where the thyroid is at. And if we need a boost in T3, then I absolutely am going to use some 100%. I don't know if retatrutide would be under the fat burners
Right now,
section.
I think, yeah, definitely.
I think so too,
The
because
glucagon effects, like, is
the
crazy.
GIP and glucagon aspect of it, with it lowering blood sugars and then
Yeah,
actually having some lipolysis effects, like those two compounds, SLU and Reta, put together are a really great fat burning
crazy. Yeah,
situation, man. Like really good. Um, and I've used other compounds before. And so, for fat loss, like, I have some athletes using MOTC and 5-amino. Again, these are more peptides. Jury's kind of out on those. The MOTC can be really effective and useful, but at some point it's like MOTC, 5-amino, SLU, they're all promoting mitochondrial function. And it's like, well, you can definitely overdo it with that stuff to the point
definitely.
where then you like kind of fuck yourself up. So, and again, I'm not like the most educated with the peptide, so I prefer a little bit of a less is more approach with that stuff. So, clen, yohimbine, SLU, and some retatrutide are really good. And then over the counter subs too, like some tyrosine, some acetyl L-carnitine. I'm not a huge fan of injectable L-carnitine, especially with like oil volume. Like you're already pinning like a good bit. If we're talking men, like we're already
Yeah,
pinning a good bit. Acetyl L-carnitine or like like injectable L-carnitine burns like a bitch, and like
yeah.
I, I don't like it. So
L-carnitine is actually water-based, and to be honest, I am a huge fan of injectable because I don't know if you know, but the oral version is actually quite toxic for your body. So it could be potentially liver and renal toxic a lot. So
Really?
yeah.
Okay. I did
Yeah,
not know.
because especially and the absorption is really poor. It's probably around
Yeah, I realize
20%.
that. I realize that
Yeah,
the amount that you're getting in when you take it orally versus injecting it, I know it's not even comparable. The acetyl form is the most bioavailable form of oral L-carnitine that I'm aware of.
yeah.
And again, but that's why I use it. Now I have not seen, and I use a good bit of acetyl L-carnitine. Like we do labs prior to prep, mid prep, and then again after prep. I haven't had any renal issues or liver issues from any of my athletes, and that's including the PEDs that we're using as well. So I haven't run across that with with like a toxicity point of the oral L-carnitine. But like I think there's a place for it for sure. But personally, I can't pin injectable L-carnitine. Like
You
it
you
welts on
do
it's
you do
pain.
you pin it sub-Q or intramuscular?
I was always told that it needed to be IM.
Yeah, I ever is not heard at all for you.
Yeah. I I
I
have I mean, most of what we have over here and like the athletes that I've worked with that have used it, my ex-wife, myself, other coaches and whatnot, like it's a pretty well-known thing that like it's a painful injection.
yeah,
So
a little bit, but I no longer feel that because I use it
you're
year
you're
round.
just
So
I think you're just a
yeah,
lot
it's junky.
stronger. I think you're just a lot stronger than us. And I think you being Polish, you might just be a little bit more hardened than us soft Americans, you know.
You can call it as it is. I am a little bit junky
Yeah,
right now,
you've
using
just built up a
everything.
better tolerance. You've gotten over the issues with pinning. I still hate it.
No,
I
to
still
be
hate
honest,
pinning.
I saw a very painful injection when doing sub-Q because some guys are still
Oh,
doing sub-Q, and sub-Q is a fucking pain in the ass.
yeah, and it
It's
sits
gonna
there.
lump it up, and it
Yeah,
hurts even a couple days later. So
yeah.
it totally should.
I've
But
never done it.
intramuscular
I've never
never
done
felt
it
it.
sub. Yeah, I've never
Do you
done it sub,
try to
but I've
pin it?
heard of
Do
it.
you try to pin it in your forearms?
Oh no, I've
Try
never.
try it out, man. A little bit insulin needle, pin it
Okay.
right up here. When you squeeze your form up
Yep,
right
yep.
here, yeah, in those.
I know guys that pin their growth hormone there.
Yeah, I do it often. I've pin almost everything that's insulin needles into my
Right
forearm,
there,
and
yeah.
it's
Huh.
no even glutathion. It's
That's another painful
not
injection.
not at all in the
That's
forearms. Not at all. Not at all.
that's amazing, man.
Try it out. You're
I'm
gonna be
nervous,
happy with
man.
that.
I'm scared. I've
No,
never
no,
shot anything there.
it's that little mosquito bite. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah,
You're giving me way too much credit, man. I'm not as tough as you.
yeah, you are. Your beard is so thick that you have to be.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, my beard is yeah, right. All right, whatever.
Okay, so what about the cardio? And do you think that the do you like to do? Let's rephrase it.
Yeah.
You like more cardio and more food, or less cardio and less food? Let's say it's like that.
Hmm. I could answer it two ways based off of if I'm saying for myself versus my athletes. But for my athletes,
What about me?
well, yeah, for my athletes, um, quite frankly, man, like I would try and keep the food as high as I could, as long as I could, and I would not be afraid of putting cardio in and moving cardio up in an effort to put us in a deficit. I think moving your body more helps with burning body fat. You know, simplistically, eating less and moving more burns fat, right? But if I'm going to be from a performance standpoint in the gym, I'm also trying to keep your gym performance really high. We need fuel. So being able to keep some food a little bit higher. I am a cardio guy. I use cardio. My athletes do a fair amount of cardio. I'm not a hey, my athletes never have to do cardio type of coach. You know, that's an anomaly. And so, and even my most gifted athletes from a metabolic standpoint, they still do a little bit because I think there's benefits to it regardless. So yeah, it would definitely be bump the cardio up in an effort to create a little bit more of a deficit, but still keeping food high enough that performance can be at the forefront of our mind.
Great. Okay.
I use HIIT cardio too.
Yeah, that was another question. Do you like to use more of the LISS or HIIT?
Both, yeah. I like doing HIIT to start the cardio session with LISS following for like almost an afterburn type of effect.
Okay, just to elevate the heart rate.
That's an old school method that they were doing way, decades ago, and they figured it out in a way, and it absolutely works. Now, whether there's data and literature and studies out that disproves it, just like they want to disprove that fasted cardio is not superior to fed cardio. I'm like, that's all well and good in your study of untrained individuals, but I'm talking about bodybuilders, and like, it's the same, but it's not. And like, we all know that. Like, if you do 45 minutes of cardio fasted every day for a prep versus 45 minutes of cardio post-workout every day for a prep, I'm sorry, but the fasted cardio is going to yield superior results than the fed cardio. It just is what it is.
Yeah, I believe it too.
The reason we use both is because I'm simply trying to break up the amounts of the time. I'm not like I don't like asking an athlete to do 60 minutes straight. I would rather them break it up a little bit so that way it's done with intent. Because let's call it what it is. The first 40 minutes of a 60-minute cardio session might be really good, but that last 20, when you're fatigued, you're slowing down. You're not burning as many calories. Like you're just kind of getting through it. You're clock watching at that point. Whereas like, well, I would rather you do 40 minutes fasted and then 20 minutes post-workout. So that way both sessions are done with intent. It's like, well, let's make our cardio hard. Like, let's do it challenging. You know what I mean? Like, let's get a healthy pace. Let's try and burn as many calories during it as we can. That's ultimately going to help you reduce the amount of time that you actually have to be on the machine. Because at the end of the day, the time is negligible. It's about the caloric burn.
Yeah.
So
yeah, makes sense. Okay, so you've briefly touched the topic of the refits with your guys, but do you like to incorporate cheat meals or strictly refits?
Oh, yeah. On a high day, for me, oftentimes the last meal of a high day will also be a cheat meal.
Okay.
For my big eaters, my big guys, for someone like yourself, Tony O'Burton, Justin Shire, some of my biggest guys, like my open bodybuilders, my super heavies, like their refeed days will have a cheat meal in it as well. And that's for a couple of reasons. The largest reason is just because I need calories. So I'm looking for a dense caloric meal. But also, like, there is a mental aspect of the cheat meal that I genuinely have seen just keep pushing the athlete forward. It keeps them sane. And so, because, some bodybuilders can be robotic. And let me say this, where that athlete is from geographically in the world, 100% makes a difference. So, like, let's use you, a nice Polish boy. You guys are tough. And there's a lot more robotic bodybuilders in Europe than there are in the US. You guys can just put your heads down and follow the same thing and eat the same thing and never get a cheat meal and be fine. In the US, like, they're not the same. The mentality is not the same. The access to junk food here is not the same as it is in Poland.
Yeah.
And so that makes a huge difference. Brazil, same thing. They can just eat the same thing from the grocery store every day, no problem. But then if I give them a cheat meal, it's like, wow. And like, just like everything, like everything's just like, positive, so much better, right? Some people here in the US, even the high days, they're like, can I do a cheat meal instead of the high day? I'm like, no, but we can add a small cheat meal to your high day because I'm still looking for the whole day to be a caloric surplus. But the mentality of the athlete also makes a huge difference whether cheat meals are necessary or not. and the, like based off of their geographical locations. And that's something that I've noticed in the last couple of years from working with more international athletes.
Yeah,
Very
I'm
interesting.
smiling. I'm smiling just because when you said geographically depends, I thought you're gonna tell me that me being Polish, yeah, I need to cheat on the pierogis or something like that.
Hey, if I was working with you and I said, hey, 1,500 calorie cheat meal to finish off the night, or a 2,000 calorie cheat meal to finish off the night, your job would be to roughly come up with a 2,000 calorie meal. And if pierogies are what you want, go for it. I'm looking for calories. Like with
Okay.
that, I'm solely looking for calories, but I'm also getting the added benefit of the mental relief that comes with it,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
the massive cortisol dump. You know, you take a super stressed, high cortisol athlete, you give them a burger and fry or some pierogies if they're Polish, and then it just dumps.
Yeah,
Even if it's only for a day or two. But like that drop in the cortisol can allow for a couple of days of really good fat loss.
yeah.
So it's like they're
But I'm agreeing with you when I sometimes watches those podcasts with American-based bodybuilders. They have almost proud that they are not cheat for a 4 to 5 weeks. It is something that is mind-boggling for us here in Poland because we are not here. You're probably not gonna see a single cheat meals throughout the whole of like a off season even, and then contest
oh my
prep.
god.
Forget about it. Forget about it.
Yeah.
Not even a chance. And those
I
guys
know
are,
that's super
yeah, that
common
was
in Europe,
really
man.
hard prep, 4 weeks without cheat meals.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I was making with that. Like, you know, it's just the mentality is just so much different, man. Like they we're spoiled, man. Like it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like the Americans are just like we're spoiled. We're conditioned to be having access to, you know, to junk food and whatnot, and like it's a huge part of our food culture, right? Like, you know, like any European comes over to the U.S., they eat and they're like bloated and their stomach's bothering them and they have digestive issues. They go back home, they eat their normal food, and everything fixes itself versus Americans go over to Europe and eat whatever they want. Go to Italy eating pizza and pasta. Go to Poland and eat pierogies and all these other things, and we have no digestive issues. It's like our
and,
digestion gets better. It's
and
because of
loses
food
20
quality.
pounds.
And we lose 20 pounds. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. All of my friends that travel, like, you know, for vacation and whatnot, they always lose weight when they go to Europe. Always. And they're eating, they're drinking, but yeah, they're walking around. And it's like Europeans live a much more active lifestyle than Americans as is, just simply due to the nature of the continent, right? Like there's a lot more walking, there's a lot more biking. Not everybody owns a car.
Definitely.
Super common to not have a car. You know, if you live
Yeah.
in a city, you know, so you're getting a bunch more steps. The food, I think the biggest thing though is easily the food quality.
Yeah.
Easily the food quality. You know what I mean?
We
Like you look at the packaging of food over in Europe, and there's 2 ingredients. You look at packaging of food over in the U.S. and there's 20 ingredients, and you can't
yeah.
even pronounce some of them. So it's like, okay, like, well, yeah, that's super healthy for me, right? Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, but you've also have a lot of more options like no calories and stuff like that. Here in Poland,
Yeah,
you
dude, that stuff
barely
is
can
such
find
junk,
that.
dude. That's terrible for you though.
Yeah, but it's probably better to use something like no sugar jelly than eat full sugar jelly. And here in Poland, you probably have no, like, you don't have that choice. So yeah, but
Yeah.
okay. So I'm ready, basically ready. I am lean. I am shredded to the bone. I am dry. So what now? We are coming into a peak week. Do
Okay.
you
We're
like
into
to cut GH before the competition,
Yep.
or it solely depends on how I look? If I'm dry
Most
as
of the
hell,
time, most of the time I'm cutting it. But if you are like there are conditional times where I will keep it in, but it's still always going to be a reduced amount comparatively to what maybe we were running all prep. So if 10 IUs a day was what you were running all prep, I'm still going to reduce it, even if you were bone dry. And like whatever artificial fullness I got from it, I will just simply try and replace with food. And so, because I just don't want I don't want any acute water retention from it, which the less you use, the less water retention there is. And that week of reduction is not going to make a drastic change negatively in the physique. But for some athletes, taking it out completely can help them drop 2-3 pounds of water, and now their look is drastically cleaner, and then they have a much drier and better look, and their physique is in a better position to actually peak from. But yes, it is conditional. The answer to most of these questions is it's conditional.
Depends.
It depends, but like rule of thumb, most of the time I'm pulling it. If I have an athlete that's really round and bubbly naturally without GH, I'm almost always going to take it out, because I know that the growth hormone is not what's making them round and bubbly. That's just their muscle belly and what they are. I actually just did that today. So I have an athlete that's 2.5 weeks out from a show, and I already pulled his test and his GH.
Okay.
So we had a little bit of a water rebound after our first show. So I pulled those two variables because, one, we're using a long-acting ester of test, so I know that it'll be fine. And then the GH, and I'm like, I'm just trying to get the fluid off of their physique that we had from that little rebound of the first show. So that way I can see the benefits of what we're doing. But from a peak week standpoint, getting back on track, yeah, usually at 10 days out, I actually would have either reduced or pulled the growth hormone completely. Same with
Great.
testosterone.
Great. Okay. So do you cut your... Oh, I'm not going to ask this question because you said same as with testosterone. Okay, next question. How
Yeah.
long before the show you starts to leveling up the sodium, the water intake, and maybe potassium intake, or just simply track it with your guys just to have some sort of data that you can use during the
Yeah.
peak week?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually like 2 weeks out to maybe 10 days out is when I will start saying like, hey, measure out your water. Like keep drinking out the same amount of water you do on a regular day. Let me know how much it typically is. So that way, starting at peak week, I can standardize it to what you've likely already been doing. With sodium, I'll be like, hey, do all of your normal salt amount that you would do for your meals, but like measure it. So like I'll have them do like a teaspoon measure here or something like that. And that way I know exactly how much they're using. And then I standardize it at that point. So that way going into peak week, it's already standardized. Sometimes I will use potassium salt with athletes, like some potassium chloride. And if I do, then I'll have them buy it from the grocery store, and we'll start using it during peak week. That's not something that they would be using outside of peak week. But all of that data I'm collecting or starting to collect starting as early as 2 weeks out, but maybe as late as 10 days out. So that way I can standardize it at 7 days out leading into the show.
Okay, standardizing 7 days out, but do you manipulate it at all, or you just leave it as it is? So, for example,
At
some
the
guys... Mhm.
At the beginning of the peak week, I'm not going to manipulate it. The only thing that I might do is if I feel like they're under consuming fluids, then I might add water. So if let's say an athlete just is not a big water drinker and they're only getting like 4 to 5 liters in, well, then I might be like, okay, well, I want to shoot for 6 to 7, depending on, what the number was. But like, then I'll standardize it there. And the reason of the increase in water is to promote flushing. I want them peeing. Peak week, you should
Because
be peeing a lot.
diuresis.
So
Yeah.
that would be. But sodium, I'm almost always leaving at baseline. If somebody's using a ton of salt, like
30 grams.
Yeah, like just like ridiculous amounts of
I
sodium.
have
Then
a
I'll be like,
guy who used 30 grams of salt. That was
yeah, I'll be like,
mind-boggling for
whoa,
me.
whoa, whoa, whoa. I'll be like, okay, we need to pull this back. And if I standardize their water and I lower the sodium a smidge, I can just about guarantee they're going to flush better
Yeah.
because water follows sodium. So it's like, well, that's a super simple adjustment. And then that makes it easier as opposed to 2 days out, I'm learning that they're doing 30 grams of salt. And I'm like, holy fuck, like, what are we doing? No wonder this diazide's not working because you're sodium bombing yourself every day. So all I'm doing is pissing out a little bit of sodium and that's it, you know? So that would be, that process starts a little earlier to standardize everything. That way I'm aware. And those variables I manipulate closer to the end of peak week.
Okay. So do you cut the water or reduce it or sodium, or do you leave it constant as long as the look is you are happy with the look?
As long as I'm happy with the look. The first time for a Saturday show, the first day that I'm going to likely reduce fluid will be Thursday. And let's say hypothetically the athlete's drinking 7 liters of water. I might lower it as low as 3.5 liters on Thursday. Might still be as high as like 5 liters on Thursday. Because if they're flushing really well, well, then I don't necessarily have to just cut water like crazy. And I never cut it completely. There's never going to be a day with me as a coach where I'm like, hey, no water today.
How
That
about the
just doesn't.
sodium? What about sodium in that regards?
Sodium. So on Thursday night, I might have them pull sodium out of their last meal. So it'll be baseline sodium on all of their meals until the last meal of the day in an effort to make sure that they flush, right? So if I lower sodium, right? Sodium, water follows sodium. If I'm pulling sodium, they should be able to pee a lot during that night. But also, like, I'm sure you're going to ask me about diuretics.
Next
So,
question.
okay, well, let me get in there because like this plays into my point with what I'm saying here.
Okay.
My first time that I'm using diuretics would be Thursday night for a Saturday show. And the reason why is because I want to flush as much as I can Thursday. So that way Friday, I should be having an athlete wake up really dry already. That's the whole point. But I'm using supplements and things like that throughout the week to do some natural flushing, like vitamin C. I use a multi-mineral supplement to keep mineral levels really constant. I use magnesium glycinate to keep stress levels low. Plus, magnesium is an essential mineral for muscle contractions anyway. So I will drop, like, maybe I do like a quarter diazide tab, right? You know, standard dosing of diazide, right? 37.5 /25. So I'll do a quarter, maybe Thursday night, pulling sodium from the last meal, keeping water at anywhere from 3.5 to 4 liters, you know, pretty usually. And then Friday, an athlete's going to likely wake up pretty bang on, you know, because like sodium should have been controlled. So pulling the sodium down and adding the diazide is going to help that diazide work that much better. Right. So like if I have lesser sodium and I put in a potassium sparing diuretic, like a thiazide based diuretic like diazide, well, then I can flush a lot of fluid overnight. And now that diazide that I take Thursday night is still in my system or the athlete's system Friday morning. So we should still be able to be promoting some good flushing. Friday then is when I'm going to start manipulating some more variables leading into the show.
So you mean manipulating, you mean incorporating more sodium to compensate for that loss, or more
I'll go
water?
back to baseline salt to start the day Friday, and then I will increase sodium Friday night, maybe as early as second to last meal of the day, maybe as late as last meal of the day. Maybe I don't increase it at all. Maybe I just run baseline salt all day long on Friday if the look is just keep continuing to get it better after every meal. Maybe they're continuing to diurese really, really well, so they're flushing and peeing. But I also lower the water again on Friday. So water is definitely lower Friday than it was on Thursday.
Okay, and probably another quarter of diazide, yeah,
Could
on
be, yeah.
Friday night.
I might do a couple things. I might do just another quarter diazide Friday night because I saw what it did Thursday, so it's rather predictable. If I want to keep diuresing, if I feel like they need to continue to get drier throughout the day Friday, well then maybe I'll do an eighth of a diazide in the morning on Friday, or maybe after meal one or something like that. Maybe I do another eighth at nighttime, which that would come up to a full quarter. You know,
Okay.
there have been times when I felt like I needed to do an eighth in the morning, an eighth midday, and then an eighth at night. And I just kind of sprinkled it in throughout the day. Yeah, I understand that the half-life of the drug is longer than what I'm sprinkling it in, and it's slowly compounding on itself, but that's okay. Like, that's not a bad thing. And so, especially if we're managing our NA to K levels, that's fine. And so, but as the biggest feedback from a biofeedback standpoint is, are you still peeing? Yes, I'm still going, pretty regularly. Okay, cool. What color is it? Is it starting to get really, really, really dark? Okay, then that's where we just have to keep in mind of like how much water we're drinking and stuff like that.
Okay.
But Friday, I mean, we use ounces here in the US sometimes too. So I know that's not going to translate very well, but like a pretty commonly like 12 ounces of water a meal on Friday, 10 ounces of water a meal on Friday. I've done lower. I've done like 4 ounces and 3 ounces, like one day out. But I've noticed if I pull water down too low, too early, they stop peeing. And then they start holding.
Yeah.
And then that dry, grainy, like veiny look that I had them at, it doesn't hold. So most of the peaks that I've nailed, actually almost all of them that I've really nailed this year, which is, I mean, I would say most of them, but like they were drinking 12 ounces of water a meal, 10 ounces of water a meal a day out. So, and my athletes usually eat 5 to 6 meals a day. So that's still 50 to 60 ounces. That's about half a gallon.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
the day of the
So
show is super low though.
okay, so I've asked about the diuretics and stuff like that, but we haven't covered the carving up and process. And this is something that some coaches started uh, as earlier as 7 days out. How do
Yeah.
you like to how to manage the carb load?
So I refer I refer to it as reverse dieting into a show. So similar to a reverse diet out of a contest prep, I kind of
Yeah.
do that into the show. So usually the first thing that I do in the beginning of a peak week is I'm lowering cardio, I'm lowering fat burners, and I'm adding some more dietary fats to the baseline diet. And I will maybe add some carbohydrates in at that same time too, based off of like how low their food is going into peak week. And so, because I'm trying to first and foremost drop stressors to help flush inflammation and lower the cortisol going into the week, as opposed to I'm not just like loading a ton of food like right at the start of the week. It's a really gradual process for me. So like every day I'm trying to slowly increase food. So that way I am technically backloading into the show as opposed to front loading. But I do find that that works really well. And every day that I give a little bit more food, I should be able to get a cortisol response, meaning that cortisol can drop because there's an inversely correlated relationship between cortisol and carbohydrates. So that process has worked extremely well for me. But I will go fats first to start the week and start increasing some dietary fat because I need to replenish intramuscular triglycerides too, not just glycogen.
Yeah.
And that process takes longer than 36 hours of carbs.
Yeah.
So, but on Thursday, the day that I'm dropping my first bit of Diazide, the day that I'm lowering fluid for the first time, that's an important day of feeding as well for us. So like we still need to make sure that we're feeding. And if I have like a decent bead on the athlete and I know that they're going to flush a lot overnight, I don't want them to wake up flat Friday morning. You know what I mean? Like it's okay to be a little flat and dry Friday, but like I don't want them to be like sucked down like to nothing. So throughout the week, I'm slowly increasing carbohydrates. I don't have a rule of thumb of how much though. It's all based off of the look and how they're responding. Some people go on stage only eating like 300, 400 grams of carbs the day prior. It is what it is. It's a matter of what relates to the fullness that we need on stage. Whereas others are 700, 800, 900, and it's like they're still flat. And it's like their body just like their metabolism just went like into overdrive. So,
Okay.
but also sometimes you can pull water so low that the food doesn't have something to stick to. Like carbohydrates, if you want them to really stick and not just get burned up and just, not do anything to your physique, sometimes they need a little bit more fluid.
Yeah.
So, an extra 3 ounces of water here, an extra 4 here, just slowly bringing the water up a little bit can sometimes make a drastically different look too.
Yeah. Okay. So you says you don't want it to them waking up on a Friday flat. Does that mean that that might potentially being and incorporating on something like junk food at that Thursday night? Or okay, okay. So sorry
Too
guys for
unpredictable. Yeah, sorry
yeah.
guys.
Sorry guys, yeah. I was
Too
trying, I was
unpredictable.
trying.
Too
Yeah.
unpredictable. I do use like I said, I will really load a lot more fats at the end of the week too, but I definitely am putting them in and trickling them in more at the beginning. But I use a lot of saturated fat at the end of the week. So like grass fed butter or ghee or bacon. I might start using that Thursday. Then I'll definitely start using more saturated fats Thursday, a good bit Friday, and then definitely on Saturday as well.
Okay.
So the fats just, I mean, it just makes the physique just look like granite.
Okay. So let's say we nailed it. I'm waking up on a Saturday morning. I'm looking dry. I'm looking probably kind of flattish, as most of the guys gonna look on a Saturday morning.
Mhm.
It's better that they gonna be on the flatter side than over full side. So
Definitely,
let's say I'm a little bit flatter, but not much. Nothing that we
yeah.
can replenish
Yeah.
to the till the moment I step on the stage. So what about the food on the show days? Do you like to still keep the meals as steady as they are? For example, if we are have set meals throughout the Thursday, Friday, you just leave it like they are, or maybe you just remove the protein, or maybe just decrease it slightly, or maybe not using whole foods at all and trying to bring more like a fluid carbs, or maybe like slightly more processed foods like just the rice cakes and jam or something like that, something that has a little bit lower volume.
The foods is going to remain very similar as far as the types of foods. I do lower protein on Friday, and sometimes I'll lower it Thursday as well. But on the day of the show, I'm lowering it even more. You might only have 100 grams of a cooked protein per meal, on show day. So the first meal of the day still has some protein in it, and it's usually always red meat. I do use a lot of red meat on the back end of peak week as well as show day. I want the animal fat from the red meat. I like the way that red meat digests, and as long as somebody's not getting any like gassiness or like acid reflux from eating that much red meat, I do think that it has a visual effect on the physique more so than like chicken or white fish. Um, so it'll be either usually rice or cream of rice with definitely some dietary fats. Like if we're a little flat Saturday morning, just totally fine. It's kind of normal. Um, then the first meal is going to be a relatively aggressive meal to try and replenish and get the pop that where we need it. A little bit of fluid, maybe as much as 6 ounces of water, maybe as low as 3 ounces. I usually will use coffee. If somebody's not a coffee drinker, then water is fine, but I like coffee. I think it also helps stimulate a bowel movement because getting a poop out first thing in the morning on show day
Yeah,
is
helps.
oh, that's the secret. That's the secret right there. So that meal, and it's all relative to how big the meals were that the athlete had been eating leading into the show. But that's going to be a hearty meal. It's going to be a dense meal with calories. I might use some honey, or jam is fine. Very low volume, more sugary carbs. But I don't go crazy with sugary carbs because I do notice that there's a little bit of a film of water if you load on too much sugar. No matter how much diazide you use, it just kind of the insulin response from it just causes a little bit of water. But first thing in the morning is fine. You have plenty of time for that to dissipate. Shouldn't be any issues with it, with fats and everything, and either baseline sodium or a slight increase in sodium because the water is low. And again, if somebody's on the flatter side, you can definitely push the sodium up in an effort to try and pull some fullness back into the muscle. So that would be how I would handle the first meal, and then we assess after.
Okay. Okay. So let's say that everything goes well and I'm get off the stage. I'm obviously one because I'm your athlete, so I have to.
Yeah, duh.
So, what about what do you do if there's a second show on the next day? For example, in Poland we have like a regionals on a Saturday, and then, for example, a pro card fight on
Oh
the
yeah.
Sunday. So, what in case of 2 days show? How would we assess and try to peak once again?
Yeah, I don't have as much experience with that because there's not that many here. I have done it, but I've probably done it like maybe less than 10 times. The Olympia is like this too. Like, so like with
Yeah,
Tonio, I have to do this and it's like Friday night and then Saturday night.
yeah,
But but it's definitely possible. So what I would end up doing is like I would reintroduce a little bit of water. So like whatever their baseline water was the day of the show, I might slightly increase it to just bring some fluid back in. Um, and then just to make sure that they're continuing to diurese and flush. And then depending on like how they look after the show, like are they blasting full, like just ready to rock? Like, could they go back on stage and do a whole nother round of posing and like still look just as good? Like, you know what I mean? Like they
yeah.
might look that way. So then that would tell me, I'm like, okay, maintenance food, go to bed, wake up the next morning, you'll still be dry. Maybe an eighth of a diazide that night, if any. But because they're gonna flush overnight by default, might not need it, and then baseline food, wake ups, the next morning should still be dry. If they're a little flat, no worries, because they're actually probably going to be drier the next day from simply being in a dehydrated state for so long. But that's the whole reason why I add a little bit of water at the nighttime meals for maybe after the first day. Let's say they're flat. So like we finished the show, they've blown through all of their loading, and I can tell I'm like, I don't want to send them to bed flat because if I do, from the dehydrated state, they're going to be even flatter the next morning, and then we're going to be playing catch up. Well, then they're going to be eating. It's going to be some bigger meals. It might even be something dirty. It might be a burger and fry. That would be an instance where I would use something like that. It's still relatively predictable because the water at that point would still be pretty constant. Now, I might tick up the water again for the same reasons because I want them diuresing and I want them to continue peeing. But I might need a little bit more fluid in an effort to try and rehydrate some of the muscle. Maybe it's too dehydrated, because you can definitely get overly dehydrated. So then the food's got to come back up. And then we've got to try and promote a really good night of sleep. Good nights of sleep are kind of like a rule of thumb as well for anything. It's like the better you sleep, the
Yeah.
better you look. But keeping them in a low stress environment where they're getting plenty of rest, and that we can feed up if they finish finals and they were maybe a touch on the flat side, or if I know that my goal is to simply have them fuller the next day, well then I have to push the food. So it's conditional based off of the look that they had Friday night, but it's a similar process as what we did the day before, just managing variables like water, food amounts, and then obviously diuretics.
Okay. Okay. So, what about if we are just doing those Saturday shows, but we have the next show in a 7 days, so back-to-back shows? What about that case?
I don't really like cheat meals then after that because like I don't want the water rebound from like a big like a junky meal, because of the fact that I want to start rehydrating after the first show. So like as soon like we're gonna finish the first show, as soon as you get off stage, I want to start hydrating. I want to start getting water in because I want to get your body back to homeostasis as quick as possible to be able to get back to a position the following week where I'm able to start peaking it again. Now, I did that this year several times, and it worked every single time, so it was not an issue at all. We went back to like our baseline diet for the first few days after the show, and in an effort to like deplete, to kind of like dig back down, create a little bit of depletion, create a need for more food. And then we started loading back in towards the end of the week, the following week. the process of fluid and everything, we went right back to our baseline fluid, like 7 liters of water every day, keeping, sodium back at baseline. We didn't like drop sodium and whatnot. We just kept it at baseline. If they're not doing a cheat meal, then the water rebound is noticeably easier.
Okay.
And in my opinion, I don't really think that there's a warrant or there's too much risk versus such little reward from doing the cheat meal after the first show, knowing you need to be back on stage in 7 days.
Yeah.
There's just too many, it could take you 3 to 4 days just to get the water rebound under control. And then it's like, it's Thursday and you're and you're trying to get on stage again Saturday. It's like, that's not easy. I do put cardio back in right away. I will have them take an injection as well. Not testosterone, but let's say they're using Masteron and Tren. I usually will have them take their last injection of Mast and Tren 7 days out. And then, so at the next morning after the first show, I'll have them do, a small injection of Masteron and Tren just to have the drug in the system still, and have it be able to be useful, right? Like just some basic stuff. The oral compounds, they all stay in, the AIs, all that stuff like that all stays in throughout this whole process. That never changes. But yeah, manipulating and just simply getting back to baseline as quick as possible, doing a little bit of depletion, putting cardio back in, for a few days. And then with training, I usually want them to train legs again shortly after the first show to, get the last leg day out of the way, fill the legs back up, make sure that they're full, they're not flattening out on us. And then the same process from a training standpoint all the way through the week, where we're hitting, usually maybe 1 to 2 body parts a day. Nothing's trained to failure. We're just filling it up with blood, hard contractions, stuff like that. And then we just go for it the next weekend. But the process is pretty simple if there's not junk food added. If they add the junk food, then it gets a lot more complex because you're having to do a lot more depletion.
Yeah, so if they are gonna do everything as they're supposed to, is basically hitting the replay button and doing
A
the
lot of
same
it's the
shit.
replay
Yeah,
button. Yeah, dude. A lot of it really is. And honestly, sometimes that process can yield an even better and different look the second week.
definitely.
Could be harder, drier, and grainier. And it's not that you did anything wrong the first week. It's just that you just did it again, and the physique just kind of stayed in that state and got harder. And there's no way to recreate that other than simply doing shows back to back.
And it's basically a further drop of the fatigue at this point, just because you've loaded for a couple days, and then you have the time to just get rid of the inflammation.
Yeah, just like you said, the inflammation and fatigue should be at an all-time low at that point.
Definitely.
I mean, show day is hard, and you get up early and you have to pose a lot and all that. So a lot of people are sore the next day after a show from having to flex, and pose that much. But if you practiced and everything, that's pretty manageable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, hey, I mean, you can get a massage, early in the week, Monday or Tuesday, to help flush lactic acid, help flush some fluid out. I wouldn't suggest it any later in the week than that, but I'm a big believer in that. I definitely like my athletes getting their last little bit of body work done during peak week, Tuesday or Wednesday, no later than Wednesday, but yeah, Monday, Tuesday preferred. But just to keep, lymphatic drainage going and keep everything opened up and loosened up. That way we're not having anything pinched up or bound up. That can make a noticeable difference.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, we have covered the peak week, and I think that this is the pretty much the basics, because like we said at the beginning of this podcast, this is all personal dependent, so we are not gonna dive even further, because it's probably not going to yield any more data for those guys who are trying to take out something from that. But definitely the next segment is coming out of the prep, because like we said before I hit the record button, there's a guys who are doing it for a years now, and still the post-show blues are hitting them hard. So how do you like to manage the period after the show? Do you like to go to the health phase, or do you like to utilize the rebounds just to give them some sort of a new goal, or maybe just utilize those time to build up some new muscle? Or do you not believe in that? You think that after the show we definitely have to clean out?
I do believe that the reverse diet / rebound can definitely yield new tissue. I do feel like that you're in a super calorie depleted state. Your body is extremely sensitive, and that nailing your reverse diet can yield a ton of positive results. Now, do I think it's purely new muscle from that? No. I think there's a lot of fullness that comes
Yeah,
back from simply eating in a surplus again, comparatively to the deficit that you were in. That comes back. So it's a blend. I'm pulling out all of the harder compounds. So I'm lowering AIs. I'm pulling the orals out. Tren is out, and then I might bring a low dose of test, a low dose of masteron to help manage estrogen conversion because I'm lowering the AIs, and then maybe a non-toxic compound like nandrolone for maybe 5 to 6 weeks after the contest. Just 5 to 6 weeks, less than 1,000 milligrams of total exposure in an effort to bridge a bit of a gap. I don't like going from like super physiological high end levels at the end of a prep to then like
nothing.
TRT in one fell swoop. Like I don't think that does well for people. I don't think it does well for them mentally or physically. Um, and I am 100% trying to replenish fullness, replenish training performance, and drive for 5 to 6 weeks post contest. Now, my goal with that is to keep them as tight as I can for as long as I can while I am incrementally increasing calories every single week or every other week, depending on what their body's able to handle. I really like to manage cheat meals during this time frame. So like they have their fun eating the night after the show, maybe the morning after as well. And then I want to get back to the diet as quickly as possible. And I want to stay on diet for at least the first few weeks, 2, 3 weeks. And then I can implement maybe a free meal or something like that, because their body is like a sponge that first several weeks. And if you're going to fill it with junk, especially sugar and ice cream and blah, 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 it's just going to hold it and it's going to stick, and the layer of fat is going to come on like that, because your body doesn't want to be in that state. It doesn't want to be 5-6% body fat. So it's going to try to gain body fat as quickly as possible. I've not seen somebody get really fat really quick post contest from eating diet food. I've only seen it happen from people who are lying to me and telling me that they're not eating anything off plan, but I know from whatever sources or from my eyes telling me that they're adding junk food and they're
Okay.
snacking and all of this stuff, right? They're grazing, just little bits here and there all day. They don't think that it matters or that it doesn't add up. It does matter, and it does add up. I will bring cardio back up to not the same level that they were at prior to us pulling back for peak week. But I definitely will put it back in at a healthy dosage for the first few weeks. My initial goal with the reverse diet or rebound is to handle any of the water rebound from the junk food eating that occurred, maybe the, couple days after the show. So I'm cleaning it up immediately right after, and that can be a couple weeks, which is why I'm not really doing cheat meals for a couple of weeks. Then I might give them one, and I'm like, this is for your mental state. This is not for anything other than that. This is you to have a date night with your significant other or have a meal with your family that you haven't seen in a while. But like, this is what we signed up for, guys. Like at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not being rude, mean or anything like that. I'm not like being, a jerk or, trying to be, a super controlling coach, but I'm like, this is what you signed up for. This is how you professionally rebound and reverse diet out of a show. You gradually worked your calories down. We need to gradually work them back up. A real reverse diet for me is like 12 plus weeks,
Yeah.
because that's how long it takes. You know what I mean? And you can set yourself up for a phenomenal off season and regain really, really good metabolic function and set new thresholds at certain body fat markers with how many calories you can be consuming and still maintain that body fat from a really proper reverse diet. So if somebody that's listening, if you routinely have to eat 1,000 calories a day and 2 hours of cardio and a ton of fat burners to get in shape, well, then they are a perfect example of someone who has to be very meticulous with their reverse diet, because they can absolutely change that for their next prep, because they could potentially get their body composition in a great place, like maybe 4 to 6 week out conditioning type of look, but eating 2,000 calories, 2,200 calories, 2,500 calories, if they do it right. And then that's a much better place to start a prep from than the opposite. And so at the end of the day, this is setting up your off season. So there's a lot of bodybuilders out there who have no problem getting super fat in the off season, but a lot of them also are not coming in super shredded on stage. Because the faster you start a prep, the harder it is.
And also not gaining any new tissue. They probably just drop the weight that they gain and they stay with the same amount of muscle that they started the off season.
Last time, you can only get so fat before you just stop gaining more muscle.
One more question about that. So you said 4 to 5 weeks of the rebounds, but what about?
Cycle.
Okay, so what about then after those 4 to 5 weeks?
Then it's just
Okay.
like at the start of the prep, or like just like before the prep started.
Great.
TRT, a recovery dosage of growth hormone, and letting the food do the job. You know what I mean? They should feel good. They should be fuller. They should have more energy. We're slowly titrating fat burners down as well. So let's say if we're using like Clen, T3 and stuff like that, I put them back in at the start of the reverse to kind of control the rebound. That way the junk food doesn't like spike their weight up like crazy. And if it does spike their weight up, then it's like, okay, well, now our job is to work to get that back down to a much more manageable starting point, and then we can start coming back up. But as I start coming back up, if things are going well, I'll slowly, incrementally titrate those down and then eventually take them out. And there's not a rule of thumb of like what time frame that is. Some it's sooner than others. And it's because some can stick with a diet better than others.
Yeah.
If an athlete was using retatrutide during their prep, I will usually pull that during peak week because I don't want motility slowing down. And then I will introduce it immediately right after the show for the hunger and the food noise aspect of it. That's where the GLP-1 aspect of the retatrutide can work extremely well.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. But yeah, from a PED standpoint, after the 6 weeks of the rebound cycle, we're going to go into a full-fledged health phase, completely off of everything, just testing some GH.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, Justin, I think that we cover up the subject pretty well, and everyone at
Prep
this
is
point,
easy.
yeah,
Less to talk about. It's like so simple, right?
yeah, it took us almost 2 hours, but other than that, I think that with the first and the second part, everyone at this point should basically know what's in your head when it comes to the coaching, at least for those specific types of guys, because we both knows that it's gonna be totally person dependent, but
Yeah.
I think that for those guys who are maybe considering you as their new coach, probably gonna know what they are signing for, and this is something that could benefit them as well as you, because less shitty clients that thinks that you're gonna give them 6 cheat meals during the week and just bragging you about those higher carb days every day because they think they're flat. the better. So thank you once again. And for those who are sticking with us to the end to this podcast, just remember that all of the links to the social media for the Justin you can find down there in the description box. And if you need anything, I think that Justin are not gonna be hesitating to start working with you if you're a serious guy who wanted to make progress, because we both probably like those guys who are wanted to work.
Yeah.
Just yeah, just because no one likes to work with people who
Serious
don't
inquiries
like to
only.
work. Yeah, definitely. So thank you once again, and thank you for taking your time twice.
Yeah, no, dude, I thank you again, man. I really enjoy our conversations. We are, we think a lot of the same. But I also learned some stuff today from you that I didn't know, which is always good. I'm always looking to learn, and I do continued education still on a regular basis because I think as a coach, if you think that you know it all, the day that you stop learning is the day that you start dying and you start getting complacent. You don't necessarily have to try and do different stuff, but you should at least be aware of the new technology and the new things that are out there, and in an effort to just stay with the times, right? I really don't ever want to be one of those old school bodybuilding coaches that's like, yeah, well, this is what works. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but like at the same time, like, keep up with the knowledge. I think it's important, and I think athletes want to keep up with the knowledge. They want a coach that's willing to continue to learn and stuff like that. So I'm grateful that I learned some things from you today.
Man, this is why I am doing this podcast. I am telling those guys that I am an altruist and doing it for them, but now I'm doing it just to bring smarter people here and just getting the knowledge for free. This is
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I
the
usually charge good money for that stuff that I told you
so
today.
that's the real reason, just to learn and getting knowledge from the smarter than me, and this is why I'm really happy that you take some time from out of your day, because I know you are a busy guy, especially
Yeah.
right now, because you have some serious guy competing, and it's not the best times at the end of the year to doing free knowledge courses
It's yeah, but
to
it's okay, man. Like I appreciate it, and I know it's late over there, so thanks for staying up late for me. But again, thanks for having me on again for the second time. So for
yeah,
everyone that
more than
stayed with
happy.
us to the end, I appreciate you guys listening and watching and supporting David. And he does great. His content is really good. So, but yeah,
Thank you.
thanks again, man.
Thank you once again, and have a great day, because it's pretty late out there.
Yeah, yeah,
Pretty early.
yeah, 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 yeah. All right, brother.
Yeah.
You have a great night. Talk to you soon, man.
See you. Bye.